Tonight's topic is using hot tap water on Shabbos. Is there any wiggle room? Now, we have a long-standing tradition that we don't turn on the hot water from the tap on Shabbos, and we all have a sense that this is problematic because that's the way we were brought up. But the question is it truly usur in every sense of the word? And if we could find a heter, should we rely on the heter for cases of need? And that's really what I want to explore with you tonight. There are different shades of psak in this particular halacha, to the point where our conclusion may end up being that while we're not prepared to be lenient on a regular basis for people to simply use the hot tap water to wash dishes and things like that on Shabbos, but it could be litzorech chola, for the needs of a person who's ill, or for a small child, let's say, who needs the baby bottle to be just warmed up to lukewarm temperature, right? Or perhaps you could argue that having a non-Jew turn on the hot water would be permitted. And as long as you're not turning it off or adjusting it, that might be an argument to be made as well. So those are things that I want to discuss. Now, we have a couple of gentlemen who have been immersed in Hilchos Shabbos for a number of years. So you may actually end up helping us understand the inyanim better. But I want to go from more machmir to more lenient, so that we see that there's a variety of opinions here. And really the thing that got me thinking about this is that last Tuesday I was giving a shiur, a women's shiur, to a group of women, and we were talking about using the hot water tap, and I took it as given, based on the Rav Moshe's very brief tshuva that we'll see in a moment, that there's really no heter to turn on the hot water tap on Shabbos. But one of the women said, I had heard that if you live in an apartment building where there's one central water heater, that there's more reason to be lenient. What is your opinion? And I said, well, I've heard that also, but I've never really researched it carefully, and I'm not aware of poskim who suggest that, but it's on my to-do list to try and figure this out, and so that's really why I wanted to research it a little bit more carefully. I still don't have absolute clarity, because I don't think there is absolute clarity among the poskim. There's not consensus on this issue. So let's take a look. The first stop, of course, is Rav Moshe, which is the basic tshuva. It's very short. It's part of a larger tshuva, but he contains this one paragraph, and he writes as follows in source number 1. This is in Yoredei Chelek Beis, Siman Lamed Gimel. That Rav Moshe writes as follows: Uvidvar hamayim chamim shebibatim, shekama shemotzi nichnasim mayim karim tachtehem umitbashlim. So Rav Moshe says very simply, he says that when you turn on the hot water tap, eventually hot water will come out after a few seconds. But what the problem that you're creating is that you're creating an intake into the boiler of cold water coming in. Okay? And that cold water is cooking as soon as it enters into the water heater. Assuming that you're dealing with the standard old-fashioned water heater that many people still, if not most people, still have in their homes. Now let me be clear that we're only going to see in our tshuvas the traditional old-fashioned water heater. Are most homes still equipped with a tank? Yeah. Most homes still, because what I was given the option when I needed to replace my tank is to have like the Insta-Hot, the tankless, right? Or they're called tankless water heaters.
That's more of a problem.
And so that becomes more of a problem as people have asked me.
I have one.
You do? Well, people have asked me. The problem is it becomes more problematic because as soon as you turn on the hot water tap, you're actually activating an electrical switch, and that instantly heats the water. What?
You're emitting a flame. It's gas.
Oh, it's gas?
Gas.
So how does it heat the water so instantaneously?
A lot of BTU.
A lot of BTU, and
Big fire.
And so it flows through like coils.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so some of them use electric and some of them use gas, right? I would assume that you can get either system.
I don't know if they have electric, because electric takes a long time to heat.
Uh-huh.
Whereas
Okay.
gas is...
That's interesting.
And also the furnaces are gas.
Okay, but the point is
We're
that
a gas country.
the point is that you're activating a switch immediately, and that's certainly problematic on Shabbos. It's probably a deoraisa. But what's even furthermore problematic is that whereas you can use the hot water heater on Yontif, you can't use the tankless water heater on Yontif. So what do you do on Yontif, Avi, when you want to use hot water? You just don't use hot water on Yontif either.
I have a 20-gallon electric hot water tank with shutoffs to it that I turn on for Yontif.
So special tank that you just have.
Special Yontif tank. My
A special-
stepbrother-in-law won't come over unless he can shower on Yontif. Whole different discussion.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah.
Okay. There you go. Okay, so I guess if you wanted to, and what's the benefit of the tankless? It just is more
More
convenient?
energy efficient, and all your kids can shower without cold water on Friday.
There you go.
You never run out of
Okay.
water.
You never run out of hot water. Okay.
It's also
Thank
cheap.
you.
It's also cheap.
So anyway,
More efficient also.
Well, you can, you have too many of them taking shower at the same time, unless you've got an industrial unit.
I get 2 showers at a time with the standard unit.
Right.
okay, anyway. So Rav Moshe Paskins, Pashat Sha'asr Lahotzi B'Shabbos Tuhu, Kipsik Reisha Sha'asr Af Below Miskavin. So Rav Moshe says that it is obvious to him, that it is usher to turn on the hot water tap and pull out hot water from the water tank, because you're causing, as a psik reisha, which means that it's inevitable that this is going to happen. You know it's going to happen, and therefore it's absolutely usher. V'gam efshir yesh lahachshiv shu gam miskavin. Shaharei im lo hayu nichnasim mayim acherim hakarim lo yihiyeh laod lo beod ezer shos mayim chamim kishi yitztarech lahem v'lachein ein makom lahatir. Now, maybe you're going to argue, well, it's a davar she'eno miskavin. Yes, it's true that it's a psik reisha, that it's inevitable that it's going to happen, and there's really many times we're lenient when it's a davar she'eno miskavin, when it's not something that you intend to happen, it's only a byproduct of your action. In other words, what the argument goes like this: I just want hot water. What do I care if there's an intake of cold water? Based on that, even though there's an intake of cold water that's getting cooked in the water heater, since that's not my primary intent, maybe it's not usher. Well, that's true that perhaps it's not usher if that's not your intent, but if you know for sure it's going to happen, so then the poskim say that it's still usher. But Rav Moshe says it's even worse over here. It's even worse over here because it's less convincing to argue that it's a davar she'eno miskavin, that's not something that you necessarily want or need to happen, because anytime you turn on the hot water, you are happy with the fact that there is an intake of cold water that will be replacing the hot water that left the tank, so that you can have more hot water to use later on. So he argues not only is it a psik reisha, but it's also a davar shem miskavin, that you want it to happen. V'rak mi, sheyesh lo bayit la'atzmo, yachol lechabot et ha'esh erev Shabbos, kishtei shos kodem ha'Shabbos, sheyifseku milios roschin. Okay, now, he says, only if you live in a private residence. So what has he been talking about until now? When you haven't been living in a private residence. You see from the whole context of the tshuva that Rav Moshe was addressing people who lived in apartment buildings.
In New York, yeah.
In New York, right? Lower East Side.
Or 55 FDR drive.
Yeah, and so you see from the whole context of the way he says, and it's only if you live in a private home, who's maybe a guy in Long Island, who's going to live in a private home? Maybe in Queens or Long Island, who knows? But he's speaking in the common instance was of people who were living in apartments, and even so, Rav Moshe did not feel that there's any heter, because the fact of the matter is that every person who turns on that faucet is immediately causing cold water to be intaken into the large water heater that serves all of the tenants. And so it doesn't matter that there are other tenants who are using the hot water heater. If the fact that when I turn on that faucet, cold water is being drawn in, it's a psik reisha, and therefore it's usher. So he says like this: but if you own your own home and you have full control of the hot water heater, then we can discuss that if you turn off the hot water, if you turn off the fire on the boiler about 2 hours before Shabbos, in which case on Shabbos, the water will no longer be yad soletis. It won't be hot enough for it to actually cook. It'll be warm, but it won't be scalding. And therefore, you could make the argument, Karov shelo yischamemum hamayim hakorim hanichnasim l'sham b'mida dehayad soletis v'yeh mutar. Then we could argue that it will be permitted for you to turn on the hot water tap because you've turned off the boiler 2 hours before Shabbos, and you'll get warm water out. And that, he says, you can justify because
Nothing will heat it.
any cold water that comes in will get heated, but it won't get hot to yad soletis.
But it won't be heated by, it'll just be heated by what's in there already.
That's right, but
It's off.
correct. But the point is that it's a kli rishon, and it's going to be heated by the warm water that's in there, but it won't reach the temperature of yad soletis. It won't get that hot. It'll get warm. It just won't get that hot, and therefore it's not a problem of bishul. Or alternatively, says Rav Moshe, if you're not going to turn off the heater, if you can arrange somehow mechanically that there's no cold water intake on Shabbos, then it'll be okay. I've spoken to a number
That's more
of
practical.
engineers, and that it just doesn't work. There's no way,
Turn off the valve. You can't take
You'll go
hot
straight
out
to the
without
tank.
something taking the spot.
right, there's,
Turn a Coke bottle upside down.
basically the laws of physics, the basic laws of physics will not allow hot water to come out of the water heater unless something is being pulled in.
Yeah.
That's just the rules of physics. And so doesn't seem to be any way to do that. There may be some very, very brilliant from technician who can come up with something that who knows, with air maybe, I don't know.
There's recircle pumps that people do now. Like newer buildings have recircle pumps, so there's always hot water. So there's a pump of hot water that runs through the building entirely that automatically goes back. So it's constantly circulating.
Yeah,
And then your hot water tap comes off that water as opposed to coming off the tank water.
that's interesting.
That's
But how does it remain hot if it's running circulating through the
It
pipes?
goes back. You have a
Okay.
big building, like just as an example, if you were in
But the
here,
problem
how do you
is,
get water up here?
okay, so you want to, so the thing is, so that's an interesting question. You're saying that if it's going through pipes that are circulating, it's not coming directly from the hot water heater, so then you're not directly responsible. Okay,
Well, it's also when it's going back in, it goes back in automatically. Like the hot water that gets pulled out, if you don't use it, it goes back in the hot
goes
water
back
tank
in.
automatically.
but isn't there still a cold water intake into the main water heater?
There is, it has to still fill in. but on the
So,
recircle
but
pump,
what you're arguing is that it's not necessary that by pulling out some of the hot water, I'm automatically causing, it's maybe only a suffix, which may mitigate
in
the
a big
situation
building,
in a
that would
big
be-
building.
In a modern big building.
Very interesting. Okay, so you gave us new information. That's very helpful.
Perhaps that
Okay.
system is also a cliche.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that would mitigate the issue of cooking. If it's going back into the boiler where the cold intake is, I'm not sure that would be mitigated. But he says avol bistam habatim, but that's only with private homes. But stam homes, what does he mean by stam homes? Apartments where most normal people live. He says usser ve'eni yodeya shum tzad heter. It's usser, and I don't know any room to be lenient. Now, here's an interesting shaila that's totally different from the shaila of using the hot water tap that we're going to see now from Rav Zilberstein. It's a more modern shaila, and the reason why I want to see it with you is because he helps spell out for us some of the pertinent halachic issues that will be pertinent for hot water issues. Okay, let's take a look at this
Can I just,
shaila.
before we-
Yes, Laser.
On the issue of the apartment building, we don't know, but is Ramosha making the assumption that you live in an apartment building where everybody else is Jewish?
That we don't know. He doesn't say.
Right. But
He doesn't
that-
say.
But that's probably.
But even in Lower East Side, Laser,
No,
invariably
no.
there was a couple of Italians that were living there, or Puerto Ricans that were living in the apartment building.
He lived in a massive building. It was
Yeah.
not a small building. It was.
So what do you want to argue? That
size.
since there's non-Jews that are also partaking of the hot water, and they're also causing the cold water to go in, so then maybe it's not a psik resha that I'm causing the cold water, because at the same time,
Which is what, when you go to a hotel,
Yeah.
that is you're there as an individual, you're in a big hotel, you have the opposite situation.
right?
You're turning on a hot water tank, you're turning on the tap in a hotel that has, and you're there. I mean, again.
Okay, but you see that Rav Moshe was not makel at all. He didn't say it'll be totally whether there's exclusively Jewish tenants versus Jewish and non-Jewish. He didn't make any distinctions. Okay, that's the whole tshuva from Rav Moshe. Let's take a look at tshuva from Zilberstein on a slightly different issue, which is on the Israeli dud shemesh, which is a great invention. We should have it here in Ontario also, even though we don't get as much sun. But still, it's a great patent, right? Binyan sheyesh al gago dud mayim, shemash eva. Now here it's not a dud shemesh, it's just a water tank that's on the roof. Probably it's a solar, but that's not the issue that he's going to be dealing with. Shemash eva mimalat oto keshemit rokain, ha'im mutar liftoach berez b'shabbat. So the question that he's asking is as follows, not as far as hot water, just using regular water that comes from a cold water tank that's on top of the roof. And the question is that at some point, there's a pump that is activated to draw in water to the water tank if the water level gets a little bit too low. So, she'ela, binyan rav komot habanui bi'ir she'ein bo lachatz mayim. You have a multiple-story building that is built in a city which does not have a lot of water pressure. Uchedei lahalot mayim lekomot ha'elyonot hitkinu begag dud anak shel mayim. And in order to be able to service the higher floors, that because of the low water pressure in this city, they place a water tank on the roof, okay, a big water tank, v'hamayim magiyim l'kol dayarei habinyan derech hadud. And that's how the people, the residents, get their water supply is from the water tank. V'kach ze po'el. And the way it works is as follows. B'toch hadud yesh matzof. Inside the big water tank, there's a floating valve. Just like in your toilet tank, right? That big ball. It's a floating valve, right? What is that? What's the official name for that thing? A ball cock. There you go. When the water goes down 2/3 of the way, so you only have 1/3 of the water level left in the water tank, hamatzof maf'il ba'ofen chashmali et hamash'eva shemamalet et hadud. So what happens is that the ball cock activates a switch, an electric switch, which immediately turns on a pump, which draws water to the water tank in the roof to fill it back up. Nimsa shedayar shepoteach et haberez b'shah shahamayim krovim lamatzov v'hu rokein et hadud ba'ofen shamayim hegiu lamatzov harei b'ptichat haberez hivil et hamasheva. So it turns out that when a tenant opens up his water faucet, the cold water faucet, the cold tap we're talking about, when the water is very, very low, about to activate the valve, the floating valve, what's going to happen is he's going to activate the electric switch. V'imkein ka'asher hu poteach et haberez b'shabbat, harei hu mafil et hamash'eva b'shabbat.
But he's not aware of that, though.
He's not aware of it. He doesn't even know if it's going to happen. You don't know when you turn on the faucet. You have no idea where the water level is in the water tank. So the question is, do you have to be choshesh that maybe my turning on the faucet is going to activate the switch because pinklach at the time that I turn on the faucet, that's when the water level is at that point.
This is not a bishul.
It's not a bishul question. This is turning on a switch, electrical shaila. Whatever the isser of electricity is on Shabbos. It doesn't make a nafkamina as far as the fact is that we know it's usher to flick a switch. So the question is, do I have to worry that I'm flicking a switch when I turn on the water?
Isn't it like the remote in the fridge? When you open it up?
Very good, Derek. So he's going to zushtel to that in just a minute, okay? V'yesh lihistapek ha'imuter liftoach b'vinyan kazeh berez b'shabbat שהרי כל הפותח את הברז בבית נכנס לספק שאולי כעת הוא יפעיל את המשאבה. So that's the shaila. Every single tenant has to be choshesh maybe that at the moment that I'm opening the faucet, I'm activating the switch. Is that something that you have to be choshesh for or not? So he says tshuva. So he says as follows: Ne'emar b'Sanhedrin Amar Rav Papa Haiman de Kafte Lechavri Va'ashkilalei Bidka Demai. So this is a Gemara that is quoted by a number of poskim in being done with the issue of grama on Shabbos. Even though this case in Sanhedrin has nothing to do with Hilchos Shabbos, it has to do with Hilchos Ritzicha, with the laws of murder. And the question is, how do you get away with murder? And the issue being, what if I cause someone's death? Like those elaborate, in the superhero scene where they tie up the superhero and he says, okay, Batman, when the clock strikes this, then the thing will call from here, and then the thing will go here, and then the acid will fall on you, and then you'll die. And he laughs, and then he runs away, never watching to make sure that the hero is dead. And then all of a sudden what happens is they untie the strings, and they get out in time, and everyone is saved, okay? So the question is like this. What the Gemara in Sanhedrin asks the following shaila. What if I want to creatively murder my friend, and I don't want to do it in such a way where it's active murder? So what I'll do is I'll tie him up, and I'll stick him in front of a water that is going to be running into his face and eventually drowning him. And what I'm going to do is I will pull out the plug that causes the water to flow, and eventually he'll drown. Okay? Whatever apparatus you can imagine, like a tank or whatever it is, and that way he'll be drowning. I'm not killing him. He's drowning through asphyxiation, but I just left him there in an empty tank and I pulled the plug. I opened the plug for the water to rush in, so am I guilty? Can I be put to death for committing an act of murder? Now, obviously, klape shmaya, there's no shaila. I'm a murderer. Hashem will deal with me. But the question is, does the Sanhedrin have the ability to put me to death for committing an act of murder? That's the shaila, right? So it's like a grama form of murder. So they quote this Gemara. You tie up your friend, the ashkala le bidka demaya, giri didehu umichayev. So the Gemara initially states that initial flow of water that came as a result of you pulling the plug is your direct causative act, and therefore you're chayev misa if he gets killed through that first wave of water. But then, hani mili bekoach rishon, but then the Gemara says it's only if the first wave of water that was prevented from flowing by the plug kills him. However, but if it's a cumulative effect where he doesn't die immediately from the first wave or flow of water, but it takes a few minutes for the tank to fill up, and then slowly goes up to his head, and then he dies that way. So then that's grama, and I'm going to be pater. I won't be able to be convicted in Sanhedrin for this guy's death. Okay, so what does this have to do with Hilchos Shabbos? So he says, Uvegeder mahu koach rishon u'mahu koach sheni. So we'll see. Now, as far as what is considered to be koach rishon, directly from my inertia, and what is considered to be indirect or secondarily from me, nemru barishonim kama pirushim. There are many different commentaries. Uveyad Rama, one of the Rishonim is the Yad Rama. Kasav beferish harishon dekoach rishon nechshav lamayim shnekrim mimkomim b'shas hapsicha. He says the first flood of water that comes in when I unplug the hole, that causes the water to flow in on the guy, that's called koach rishon. Vehe mamayim hakrovim leberes, that's the water that's right by the faucet or the plug. Okay? Aval hamayim shaboim la'acher mikein havira koach sheni grama ba'almahu. But he says all the subsequent water that comes that ends up killing the guy, not the first flood or splash of water, that's grama, and therefore I'm not considered to be directly involved with that. I'm not liable. The Yad Ramal The Yad Ramah is unhappy with that interpretation, but at least that seems to be a working interpretation for some poskim. He says, so for example, for the Hilchos Netilas Yadayim, again, not Hilchos Shabbos, now we're not dealing with murder, but we're dealing with Hilchos Netilas Yadayim. The question is, what if I don't have a cup? And I want to wash my hands. So what do we need in order to be Yotzei the takana of Netilas Yadayim? You need Koach Gavra. So what is considered to be Koach Gavra? Can I turn on a faucet, let the water flow for a few seconds, and then stick my hand under? No. That's called Koach Sheni, according to the Shulchan Aruch. What must I do? I have to hold my hand under the unturned on faucet, and then turn on the faucet while my hand is there, because that's called koach rishon, and then turn it off, and then turn it on again, turn it off. If I want to wash 3 times, right? That's called koach rishon. If I turn on the faucet, let it run for a second, and then put my hand, that's called what? Koach sheni, and it's not considered to be koach gavra, right? It's not considered to be directly from a human being. Now, what does this have to do with Hilchas Shabbos? So think about it for a second. Even before we get to that elaborate structure that you talked about, Avi, you still have, even in the old-fashioned water heaters, I'm turning on the faucet, and is that called koach rishon, that the cold water is coming into the water tank as a result of my turning on the faucet? It's not called koach. I mean, you can argue it's not called koach rishon, says Rav Zilberstein. And therefore, even if, I mean, he's not talking about cold water coming in, but he's talking about, let's say, by my turning on the faucet, I'm causing that floating, the ball cock to activate the switch. Is that koach rishon or is that koach sheni? So he says as follows. He wants to argue, just go to the next paragraph. He says, "V'hinei be'inyanenu lo shchiach shebediuk keshiyiftach et haberez yitrokein hadud v'yafil et hamash eva." He says, in our situation, it's very unlikely that the moment that you open the faucet, that at that moment the water tank is going to empty immediately. It's mamish like on the line, and the first amount of water that you turn on is going to activate the switch. What's much more likely is that you'll turn on the faucet, water will start to flow, and then after a few seconds, you're washing the dishes, and after a few seconds, you're going to activate the switch. Okay, that's what's more likely. So that he wants to argue. It's only a grama. Now, even if it's a grama, what's the laws of grama on Hilchas Shabbos, Simi?
Still got a problem.
At least it's an Isser D'Rabbanan, right?
Sure.
Right?
So I don't see the Tushtel here.
Well, hold on. You're in the middle of a tshuva. But you see, at least, so sometimes a tshuva is based on you go layer after layer of mitigation until finally you come to mutter. So first of all, we've mitigated the issue of that it's not koach rishon, it's only a grama. Okay, so it's a causative act, it's not direct. Now let's go to the next step. Okay? Ach yu'uyin b'chazonish, shekasav shebeshabes chayv afilu b'koyach sheni. The problem is the Chazon Ish holds that even something that's not a direct product of my action is still asur in Hilchas Shabbos. Ve'av sharminin b'chulin shele'inyan shchito u'retzicha koach sheni lo chashiv koach adam ein ladamos melecha Shabbos lahen. And even though in Hilchos Shchita and in Hilchos Ritzicha, the laws of murder, maybe you can get off from being convicted, but you can't always be medama milsa lamilsa. You can't always compare one genre of halacha to another genre of halacha. Shaharei poreis mitzuda chayiv le'inyan Shabbos va'afilo nitzod la'achar kama shaos le'inyan Ritzicha ki gavna potter. I'll give you a perfect example. Trapping an animal by setting up a trap where I'm not even present when the animal is trapped, I'm still doing a malacha of tzad. Whereas, if I set up an elaborate mouse trap to cause someone to die, like, I set up one of those Rambo-type traps where there's a tripwire, and the guy walks over the tripwire and he explodes, or he gets shot through with arrows, so then I'm not chayiv misa. That's not called ritzicha. So you see that koach sheni, there's a difference between laws of Ritzicha and laws of Shabbos. So therefore, Simi, your question is well based. He says, Shuv nistapek sheyitaken shezeh dafka b'melacha shedarken bekach aval hameisir monea mimechona va'al yedei zehu hitchil lif'ol yesh makom listapek im gam koach sheni chashiv ma'asav. But the Chazon Ish also has the following suffix, that maybe this isn't even called koach sheni. Because by just removing something that prevents a machine from working may be considered to be more direct than koach sheni. And so therefore, maybe over here you could argue that by removing the water level from the water tank, you're actually causing something to operate, a switch to operate more directly. But, he says, next paragraph, "V'hinei l'chor gamim nobar shahaf alat hamash eva nechshevet l'kocho b'inyanenu harei ze grama sharei keshamayim zormim he moridim et hamatzof hamatzof mafil et hamash eva." He says, but over here, it's clear that this is called grama, because it's not your opening of the tap that causes the switch to turn on, like an instant water heater, like the Insta-Hot, the tankless hot water. But rather over here, your turning on the water causes the water to go down, which causes the ball cock to go down, which then causes the switch to turn on. So that's clearly a grama, he wants to argue. That's not direct at all. Okay? And therefore he says, "V'hinei asiyat melachal yedei grama pasuk harama shemutar rak b'makom seda." Now the Rama says, doing a malacha through a grama is only permitted when there's a financial loss or some other dire need. Achacha lo havi mamash asiyat melacha b'grama ela psik reisha b'grama. But here it's even better. He says, because my objective is not to cause the switch to turn on. That's not my objective. When I'm turning on the water, it's not in order to get the switch to turn on. That would be doing a malacha through grama. My objective here, this davar she'eno miskaven, I'm doing a davar she'eno miskaven. It's not my intent here to turn on the switch. My intent is just to get water out of the tank. So therefore, it's less than doing malacha al yedei grama. It's a psik reisha al yedei grama. It's a psik reisha, something that may definitely happen as a result of a grama act, indirect act. And there he says, "Uvemincha shlomo, kasav shepsik reisha begrama mutter af below hefsid." That you can even be more lenient, according to, I think that's Reb Shlomo Zalman. You can even be more lenient. Okay? V'lochein hitter liftoach mekarer b'shabbat. And therefore we go to Derek's case. He says that's the reason why you're allowed to open up a refrigerator or a freezer on Shabbos. Af shegorm she'ikanes chom letoch hamekarer ula'achar miken hamekarer matchil lif'ol. Even though by opening the refrigerator door, you're causing warm air to rush in, and through the warm air rushing in, you're causing the switch to turn on, to the motor to turn on to refrigerate the air. So if that's mutter, then why isn't this mutter? Right? It's not a psik reisha because you don't know if it's going to turn it on. It may be a psik reisha. It's a suffix psik reisha. We just don't know where the water level is. Just like when you open up the refrigerator, you don't know for sure that the motor is going to turn on. It may turn on if you get it at a cycle where the temperature is starting to rise.
So that in itself takes it out of the partial psik reisha, because psik reisha means it's going to happen for sure.
Right, well here you could argue it's a suffix psik reisha, you just don't know the mitzias. You don't know the mitzias, right? So we would call it a suffix psik reisha. It either is a psik reisha or it's not a psik reisha. If the temperature is higher in the refrigerator right now, such that by opening the refrigerator door it will automatically activate the thermostat, then it is a psik reisha. But you don't have the knowledge to know what the temperature is inside the refrigerator to know whether it's going to be a psik reisha or not. So that's why he calls it a suffix psik reisha. Okay? And therefore, he says, but yesh cholkin alav, some disagree. V'hacha yesh la'ayin she'ulai yesh makom lahatir, sharei havi rak suffix psik reisha bigrama, va'af shenicha lei ki im lo yitmalei lo yu mayim bedud mikol makom ulai mutar, va'adavar zakuk lahachra'at gedoylei haTorah. He says, therefore, it could be that we can be permissive here. It's a suffix psik reisha. It's through a grama. And even though you want the water to fill up in the tank so that there'll be more water, nonetheless, it's a suffix psik reisha, and therefore we have room to be lenient. But he says, I'm not prepared to categorically say it's mutter unless we have the gedolim who are willing to go along.
But what about toilets?
Yeah, what about toilets?
There's an electric pump that, because why you get the force of the water. The electric pumping system that pumps the water down when you flush it.
No, it's not. It's gravity.
Yeah. No, it's not just gravity, because it has a force to it.
Gravity.
It's a vacuum.
No, what's your gravity?
It's a
Is there a
vacuum.
plumber here?
There's a general
You have
contractor.
toilets,
Yeah.
there's no
It's a
electricity
vacuum.
in
I'm
it.
told there's an electric pump in it.
In an
That's why you
airplane,
get
in an
pressure.
airplane there is, there's an
That's why you
electric
get pressure.
Do you have an airplane toilet in your house? Okay. Anyway, all right, listen, maybe there is such a contraption, who knows? But the most toilets do not. Okay. Anyway, for reasons of time constraints, I want us to go on to the Hart Tzvi, to Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank.
So just to make, is there an analogy between our faucet and
Okay,
this year's?
so
Like, are we- or was there one
make it Sushtel now. What we've established is that the turning on of a switch in the water tank is a malacha. But the reason why he's prepared to be makel is because it's a grama, it's koach sheni, this grama, right? And it's a suffix psik resha. So therefore, even though it's a davar shemiskaveng, you can maybe be lenient. Let's think about this in our own minds. What about the cold water that's going to be coming into the water tank? Is that considered a grama or not? Is it a suffix psik resha or is it a vadai psik resha? Right? And will that make a difference? And is it a davar shemiskavin or davar sheina miskavin? So Rav Moshe said it's a davar shemiskavin. You want the water to come in so that it'll be heated for future use. It seems like it's a psik resha. And so therefore, even though it's a grama, because it's not directly a result of you turning on the switch that the cold water's rushing in. So the only thing we have going for us is the grama. But let's see, there are other poskim who want to apply the arguments that Rav Zilberstein made to his water pumps shaila and apply that to the hot water tank. Okay, so let's take a look now at Rav Tzvi Pesach. He says like this, Psichas berez shel dud shemesh b'Shabbos. Now he's dealing with a different shaila, and again, we're getting closer, okay? He's dealing with the shaila of a solar water heater, where there's more reason to be lenient because the water is not being heated by fire or electricity, but is rather being heated by solar energy. And so something that's heated by the sun is more, where there's more reason to be lenient as far as the laws of Bishul. You know, one of the people asked me at the Shiur on Tuesday, how can it be like Rav Moshe's lenient on a kli shlishi? If you put hot water in a tertiary or a third vessel, he says it's not mavashal at all. And someone said, but einenu roos, we see that it can be sometimes just as hot as water that's in a kli sheni or even a kli rishon. So how can you be lenient? One of the responses is that Chazal understood that some way it changes because you've poured it from one vessel to another. And just like they said that something that is heated by the sun does not have the power to cook. A heating element that is hot from the sun does not have the power to halachically cook, even though it can maybe be just as hot as something that a heating element. In the similar vein, there are halachic rules of bishul, even though scientifically it would be hard to draw those distinctions. Okay? So here's an example of a water heater that's heated by solar energy. Bidvar ha'she'ela al meshen ischadesh hayom shedud mayim mitchamei mikoach hashemesh. So here we have a water tank that's on the roof that has solar panels where the water tank gets heated by solar energy. Shahadud omeid al hagag klape hashemesh ucheshalokchin b'shabes mayim chamim mehaberez hanimshach midud hamayim teikaf nichnasim mayim karim letoch hadud derech tzinor acher hanimshach lahadud hacham shal penei hagag. As soon as you turn on the faucet, there's a water intake that brings the water into cold water into the tank, and immediately causes it to replace the hot water that's been poured out. V'chom hamayim magia gam lidei bishul v'nimsa shabazeh shenotel mayim chamim oseh sheyikonsu mayim sonanim v'yitbashlu b'Shabbos. Same issue that Rav Moshe raises. Standard water heater is the same thing. The only difference here is that this is a water heater that's heated by solar energy versus fire or electricity. Hine mashen yistapek al etzem bishul mayim bedud shel shemesh im ze nikra mevashel bechama atzma o betoldos chama. So the Gemara makes an interesting distinction. If something is heated by the sun directly, then it doesn't have the koach to be mevashel, and it's completely mutter to place, let's say, an egg on the sidewalk on a very, very hot day if it's going to be heated primarily by the sun directly. Okay? However, let's say you take a piece of metal that is heated by the sun and you use that as the heating element, that's called toldos chama. And while the Chazal said that that too does not have the ability to be mevashel midioraisa, but nevertheless midirabanan, it's still usher to heat things up with an element that has been heated by the sun. So the question is, something that is heated by a solar panel, is that toldos chama? Is it chama? Is it cooked by the sun, or is it cooked by toldos chama? And therefore, it at least will be asr midirabanan to allow cold water to come in contact with this hot water.
I think the logic by regular, when you're talking about the toldos of chama, is because it's near Kimavasha.
Correct. It has the appearance. It looks like,
So
because
that's
no
why
one.
Chazal made a takana in that case. Now we
Right.
want to take that toldos chama and extrapolate it to something that's on the roof. So the
Yeah.
question is, does that gzeira, can you extract? You see what I'm saying? You're taking a gzeira.
It is a gzeira,
Right.
but it's a gzeira to anything that is heated by the sun.
And on the roof, it's near
No, but the
Kimavasha.
problem is your water coming in.
I don't think it matters that it's situated on the roof. If someone
I don't mean it's
sees,
on the roof. The point is that we're now looking at the technology that's saying you have it going through you have the heat versus now having it through a kli, which would be a tolda.
yeah,
But the problem is all about nirik mevashel. I don't know. I'm just like wondering.
Okay.
Does
Okay.
it get that hot like Yad Soletis?
yeah, it does get to Yad Soletis for sure. So he says, Zelo nogeya benidon didon. He says that's not applicable in our case as far as the solar heater. Shebenidon shelifanenu harei hamayim hakarim nichnasim letoch hamayim hachamim umitbashlim b'mayim hachamim. V'hamayim hachamim bevadai toldos chamaim. He says it's not a question of whether the cold water is going to be heated by the solar panel. That already you have a shaila. Is a solar panel chama or toldos chama? But surely the hot water that is heated by the solar panel is for sure toldos chama, and therefore there's at least an isser derabanan to allow cold water to get cooked by the hot water that's in the dud, that's in the solar panel, in the solar heater. V'nimsa shemevashel mayim karim betoldot chama shasur midirabanan. Ella, but he says, but the argument is shebenidon didan eino mitkavein lahachnis mayim karim. The afal gav the habib sikresha. He says over here you could argue, says Reb Tzvi Pesach, that your intent is not to cause the water to come in. All you want is the hot water. You don't really care about cold water intake, which is not what Rav Moshe said. Rav Moshe had said it is nichale. It's nichale that you get the cold water to come in because you want to heat water for the next time. But he says, no, it's not your primary objective. Mikol makom banu lemachlokas atrumas hadeshin b'amogin avram b'psik reisha derabbanan. But there's already an outstanding machlokas between the trumas hadeshin and the mogin avram when it comes to psik reisha on an isser derabbanan. Can you justify it or not? Can it be permitted or not? And he says there are a lot of different opinions, and some say you can be mekel. He says ulam nir'eh shebinidon didan yesh lahakel. So Reb Tzvi Pesach says, but nonetheless, I think that even according to the machmirim over here, you can be lenient. Now, why? By the way, I want to tell you, I don't know anyone. When I was living in Eretz Yisrael, all of the dudim had a switch, the red switch, and you would turn off the dud before Shabbos, a couple of hours before Shabbos, like Rav Moshe had said, to make sure that the water is not Yad Soletis, but with the onset of Shabbos.
Well, that
Or-
would be more of a cooking thing. Because
Right.
when the red button boosts the tank to give it more heat, if it's not hot enough outside.
Oh, is that what it's for?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's an
okay.
electric heater.
Right.
That's an electric coil
That's
on
right,
top.
that's right, I forgot.
In a Dutch
Okay.
in Israel, you wouldn't have cold water going in. You would never have that. It's
You
not
know,
possible.
you don't have a cold intake?
No, because the way the Dutch shemishes in Israel work is the cold water goes up, goes through the solar coils, then goes to the storage tank. So you would never have cold water.
But isn't that
But
water
hang on,
being
when
cooked?
you take
It's
water
being
out of
cooked all the way into the tank.
Yeah, but hang on,
by
when you
the
take
sun.
when you take water out of the tank, don't you draw cold water in?
Not in a dud shemesh. A dud shemesh, the cold water line goes into the way they work is it's a box with glass on one side that's painted black with black pipes that heats up. So your cold water goes through those coils into the hot water tank. So you will never get cold water going into the hot water tank unless it's winter and you don't have any hot water and your electric burns.
Anyway, it could be the technology has changed.
Yeah.
It could be the technology, but he's describing the cold water going directly into the dud.
Yeah.
But even in your scenario, it's still going to be a problem because you're causing the cold water to cook by going through the
sun is
coils.
cooking it on the way in.
You're saying
Yeah.
the sun is cooking it on the way in and not the hot water. I see.
Yeah.
I see the distinction you're making.
But the point is that the water flows when you empty. When you open the tap.
So that we've already established, Mel. Yeah, so that we understand. But what Avi's arguing is that
You're not
maybe
going hot water, you're not going cold water to hot water.
maybe this is not toldos chama. Maybe this is
Right.
chama
It's straight
mamish.
chama,
Yeah.
According to Rabbi Spitzer, actually, that cold water does go into the tank, and that is the problem. Because during the
Okay, this is a machlokas mitzias. This is what Avi is saying. Avi, I trust, because he knows the malacha, so that's, but I'm saying that at least the technology that he's describing in his time is that the intake of cold water is going into the solar heater, the solar container with hot water. But he still says you can be lenient, says Reb Tzvi Pesach. Mishum sheyesh bazeh od kula, shekol habishul kan hu rak grama, sheknisas hamayim hakorim l'soch hadud ein ze koach rishon. You see those words, koach rishon again? That's why I wanted you to see Reb Zilberstein's shaila. It's not koach rishon when the cold water comes in. Ki b'koach rishon yotzim tchila hamayim hachamim u'v'mekomim nichnasim mayim karim. He says the only koach rishon that's taking place is the hot water leaving the faucet. It's only koach sheni when the cold water enters into the dud. Umikeven de lo havi koach rishon ela koach sheni havi grama. Kideisa bechulin haiman de ishtakel achavre bitka demaya. Umis chayev. He again brings the same case from Maseches Chulin and Maseches Sanhedrin of a guy who wants to get away with murder. Right? So that's koach sheni. So he says he uses the same principles. And let's skip to the next paragraph. So therefore he says, this is a grama, and therefore it's not as bad. Ela de mistafkana de kaven dechol ikar chiv al malechas bishul olam al yedei gramahu. But then I have another issue, and that is, but what about the fact that all cooking is a grama type of activity? What do you mean by that? He says, dehu rak ma'amid v'sofeis al akira. How do you cook? What is the act of cooking for which we're doing a malacha? Is it holding an egg while it's cooking over the fire? No. And I'm turning it over the fire while it's cooking? That's not how you cook. What do? You take a pot of cold water or cold something, you put it on the fire. Did it cook at that moment? No. You step away, and then it cooks after you step away. It takes 10 minutes, a half an hour until it starts boiling. Am I liable for the malacha of bishul? Yeah. Why isn't that called a grama? Why isn't every act of bishul, exonerable because of grama? Why can't I exempt myself from any bishul because of grama? That's the argument that he wants to make. He says, "Duhurak mamid v'sofes alakira." You're just putting down the pot on the fire. And to wit, let's say I put a pot down on a fire, and before it has a chance to get hot, I pull the pot off the fire. What's the halacha? I'm not chayiv. I didn't do a malacha. I'm not chayiv.
D'Rabbanan you are.
I did an isser d'Rabbanan, but you don't use the term chayiv there. You say asr, right? Okay? Harei demaisa hasfisa lo chashiva bishul. So putting a pot down is not an act of cooking. In kain al korchach dechiya v'torah al bishul afshuhu bigrama. So therefore, you have to conclude that when the Torah says you can't cook, it means even doing a grama act, an indirect act, which will cause something to be cooked. Umemela de'ein petur grama b'melechas bishul. And therefore, his argument is it's a brilliant argument. Any kind of bishul is grama by definition. The same thing as winnowing, which is also causing a separation, but only by throwing it up in the wind. So you're doing a grama. It's a causative act by throwing it up into the wind and causing separation of the chaff and the wheat. I didn't separate the chaff and the wheat, the wind did. So why am I liable? Because that's the way you do the malacha. And if that's the argument, therefore, avola achar ha'iyun ze'eno. But he says, but after thinking about it a little bit more, says Reb Tzvi Pesach, I realize that that's also incorrect. De la'olam grama pater de kloluhu de gabe Shabbos asiyuhu de asra Torah v'lo grama. No, there is such a thing as grama, even by bishul as well, to make you exempt. V'ha de matzinu gabe bishul de chayiv al grama hachi amrinan de mikiven de chayiv Torah al malacha zu v'zulo mishkachas la'el yedei grama al kein dechol al korchach dechol puulo ma'isa shela asra Torah. He says, if the only way for me to accomplish cooking is through doing a causative act that's indirect, therefore you must conclude that when I put a pot down on the fire, I'm liable for bishul. However, there is still such a thing as an exemption of grama by bishul, if there's a way to do it directly and I do it indirectly. Umekiven delo mishkachas le bishul al yedei ma'isa svisa la'ei shuv muchach de Torah chiv al ma'isa svisa aval ein lanu halchacha l'chayvo b'chay gavne da svisa gufi al yedei grama. He says, therefore you have to conclude that every malacha has the possibility of a grama that will make you exempt, as long as you do it in a way which is not the normative way of doing it. So let's say I put a pot on an apparatus which slowly lowers the pot down onto the fire. I could therefore exempt myself because I didn't put it directly on the fire. I put it on an apparatus which will slowly lower it. Let's say I have like a weighted system where the counterbalance is a pot of cold water which has a little leak, and as the water leaks out, the other pot on the other side will slowly lower itself onto the fire. That would be a grama of bishul. Isn't all bishul grama? No. So Rabbi Pesach says, putting it directly on the fire, granted it's causative because it doesn't cook immediately, but you directly put it on the fire. So there is such this concept of grama even by bishul. And therefore his argument is, ha'olam mikol hanal, shebenidon didan lo havi el grama, unihid shegrama asura al kolponim midirabanan. He says, and granted that grama is still rabbinically prohibited, mikol makom b'tzirav hadavar, Shenidon didan havi bishul betoldos chama shein asr elamidarabanan. He says, but over here, since it's only being solar heated, it's only toldos chama, which is only a derabanan in itself. Therefore, we can be lenient for a grama that is heated by toldos chama, by something that is heated by the sun, to say that it's even permitted lichatchila. In kain havale trei derabanan uvitrei derabanan bevada yesh lahatir be'eno miskavin b'psikreisha kamo shekasav. He says, therefore you could be lenient. It's not a davar shemiskavin, it's not your primary intent. It's a psikreisha granted, but it's a davar sheno miskavin nonetheless. It's a grama, it's only an isser derabanan of toldos chama, and then you can be lenient. And then here's the kicker. I know we're running out of time shortly. But then he says, Od yesh lomar, last two lines of the tshuva. Kaven shebenidon didan lo havi ela grama, Gam below hatzirav shebenidon didan yesh tarti derabanan. He says, and I'll go even further. Even without the leniency of solar heat, you can still be lenient because there's two isser derabanans which you don't compound to make something usser. When you find two isser derabanans that you have to add together in order to make this usser, you don't make it usser. What are the other two derabanans? What? Yesh mekilam grama b'davar she'enu mechavim b'psik reisha. He says, because he says, because any grama act, even if it's a psik reisha, you can still be lenient. He says, because it's a davar she'eno miskavein, and a davar she'eno miskavein in itself is only an isser derabanan, and it's only a grama. So those are the two. In the final analysis of Reb Tzvi Pesach, the fact that it's only causative and it's a davar she'eno miskavein makes it mutter even when we're not dealing with a solar heated water tank. Even if it's a regular water tank that's not solar heated, his conclusion is that you can be lenient to allow you to turn on the hot water because you're only causing, it's only a grama, it's not koach rishon that causes the water intake, and it's a davar she'eino miskavein, it's not your intent. Now Rav Moshe clearly disagrees with this. This is clearly a machlokas between Rav Tzvi Pesach and Rav Moshe. Okay?
Is still in this for Rabbanim?
No,
According to Rav
mutter.
Moshe?
What?
According
To-
to Frank, that not just because it's a groma, it's still just, then it's not directed just to Rabbanim? Yes, or that's totally mutter?
Totally mutter, because it's trade derabbanans. When you have trade derabbanans, it's totally mutter. Now, the last thing we'll see is the Mishpatei Uziel, the former Sephardic chief rabbi of Israel, Rav Uziel, Rav Ben Sion Uziel, who was known to be makel on a number of issues like this. So let's see what he says. I told you we're going to go from stringent to lenient. He says, "Va'al kol panim b'malacha she'ena asura mitzad atzma, afal pi shenimsheches mimena malacha asura mutar l'divrei hakol." Whenever you have a malacha that in itself is not asur, but it causes a malacha to be done, then that's always mutter. Meha amor, and it's a much longer tshuva. He says, "Umedubar nilmod l'nidon didan, dehol v'hashi'iva mehaberes ena malacha asura klal." He says, turning on a faucet to get hot water is you're not doing any asur malacha. Afal pishin imsheches mimenu malacha asur shenases me'ed leha. He says you're causing cold water to be brought in the intake of the hot water heater, but that's happening on its own. Dahainu chadiras mayim tzonon l'so chadud sheyesh bo mayim chamim v'omid al ha'esh u'misbashim al yedei kach kina amran v'afal pishu yodei azos b'shashu shoet. Even though you know it's going to happen when you turn on the faucet, nevertheless he argues that it's mutter. Kedin talis sha'achaz ba'ha'or poshta u'miskasa ba. V'ner shal gabi hatavla sheminar hatavla v'hinofeles be'eno miskabin l'chibur l'divrei hakol l'chida amran. He says it's no different if you have a garment that has been ignited by fire and you want to cover yourself with it, but by covering yourself with it, you're smothering the fire. Even though you know that the fire will be smothered as a result of your action, but since you're doing an action which is perfectly permissible and it's only a byproduct that the fire will be put out, it's permitted. So too over here, since you're turning on the faucet is not usher to get the hot water out, and it's only a byproduct that you're causing cold water to be cooked, that's perfectly fine. Va'od yesh sad heter mishum dechadiras mayim atzonim eina nasis miyadim hashi'iva. He says, and I'll go further. He says, it's not happening immediately when you turn on the hot water that the cold water rushes in. Shebipsichas haberes yordan hamayim shebitzinoros hanimshachad me'adud hagadol shu hamakor harishon. He says, by turning on the hot water faucet, you're causing water to flow from pipes into the water heater. Uva'osa mida shiyorda me'haberes mayim achanim nichnasim bazeh achar zeh mayim achanim l'toch hatzinorot. Va'az hu shematchilim lizrom l'toch hadud hagadol hamayim atzonim uv'chgon zeh v'adai muter l'chol hadayot. And it's therefore very, very indirect. And therefore, Rav Uziel was completely permissive with using hot water on Shabbos, which is not how, you see clearly not how Rav Moshe paskin. Now, lest you think that this is only a Sephardic or an Eretz Yisrael heter, the last thing I'm going to show you, which we don't have time to go into, is a tshuva from Rav David Kronglas Zatzal. Who was Rav David Kronglas?
My Rebbe.
He was your Rebbe, Mashgiach in Baltimore. Unfortunately, he was nifter before I was in the yeshiva, but people who I knew that were there in the 70s said he was a Gaon Atzum,
Yeah.
and you were there when he was there.
Yeah,
Yeah, so you remember him.
sure.
And the Rosh Hashiva, Rav Ruderman, always deferred to him in matters of halacha. And he has a very, very lengthy tshuva, where he starts off the tshuva and he says, I want to give a disclaimer. Hine kol ma she'echtov bazehu rak la'orer lahama'ayanim v'tava pilpula de'oraisa. He says, everything that I write is only to arouse people who would like to examine the issue and to engage in pilpula, in dialectics. Abolo basi bazeh lahoros halacha l'maisa l'rabim ki zeh roi l'gedolei hador. I'm not here to paskin halacha l'maisa. That's only for the gedolei hador. The gam lo kol ha'ofanim shavim, And again, also he says that many times the mitzias is different, the mechanics and the structure of and the engineering of the things that we're dealing with vary from structure to structure. He says, "Ki nimsa kvar ata mechonot shamayim mitchamemim b'derech acher mima shanu midabrim, v'chadashim la b'kora mitchadshim." We're going to describe a certain system, and there are other systems that have been newly invented already in the 70s. He's writing this, that are very different. He says, "Ve'alkein bevakasha shelo lismoch aleinu ki im lishol lechacham ba'al hora." And therefore, he says at the opening disclaimer, don't rely on this, but ask your local posek, a person who's worthy of psak halacha. And his conclusion, though, is actually quite liberal. His conclusion is very lenient. He says there are so many sfeikos as to whether there's actually going to be immediate cooking of the cold water when it hits the hot water. You don't always know, let's say on a hot summer day, you don't always know that the cold water intake is actually so hot. You don't always know that the hot water remaining in the boiler is always that hot that it's yad soletis at the point where the cold water hits it, because maybe it's only hot at a lower point. I think the water intake on the cold water is on the bottom. So his argument was that sometimes it's really only yad soletis at the top of the water heater, because heat rises, and so maybe when the cold water hits the hot water at the bottom of the water heater, it's not it's not automatic. It's only a suffix whether it's actually going to cook. That's what he wants to argue. And there are a number of other things. Basically, it's a grama, it's koach sheni, all the things that we saw before. And therefore, he wants to argue that you could be totally makel as well, like the mishpatei uziel. So that's what I wanted to point out. I mean, it's a much longer tshuva. You can find it in the Yotzer Chachma, but I just wanted to let you know that even American poskim, or American Gedolim, or American Rabbanim, were prepared to be lenient. Hayotze mikol zeh l'psak halacha is that you have to be machmir like Rav Moshe. That's the minhag of our bubbies and zaydis, that we don't use the hot water tap on Shabbos, but litzorech, right? If there's a need, you would need to heat up like I started with, you need to heat up the bottle for the baby. You have a choyle, or you want to ask a non-Jew to turn on. There the poskim say for sure that's okay, and I think even Rav Moshe would be maskim. A goy is allowed to do malacha for you directly, even though it's a psik reisha that he's going to do malacha, as long as his act is not itself a malacha, but it's going to cause a psik reisha for a malacha to be done. You're allowed to directly ask a non-Jew to do that for you.
There is no din of psik reisha by a goy.
That's right. That's the whole point.
Classic case is a fridge. You get a goy, this is where the light bulb is left on.
There you go. And so that's the point. The point is that it's helpful to know that in many instances you do have poskim that for shas hatzorech you can be somechan when you need to. Okay, we'll hold
The
it.
solution of Rav Moshe, his first one, turning off the thing. I mean, that's something that it's so simple.
It's not practical.
Because
Avi, would you explain?
no, you can't do that.
You technically can.
You turn off the pilot.
Oh, you can turn off the pilot. That you could do.
You have to turn off the pilot, but in today's things, it would have to be probably 6 hours earlier, because they're better insulated than they were back then.
Right. There's another sefer that I saw that says that you
And
can
you're not
only
at
use the
home.
water in the morning.
You're not
You have
home.
to wait overnight
Your work.
to be able to wash your face.
So another way I saw was that you drain all the hot water. You tell me if this is, you drain all the hot water, you leave it, you turn down so that the only water that's coming in now is not yet soletis anymore. There is no more hot water.
Yeah, but then it's just a cold water tank.
There's a whole different issue.
Then it's just.
Or it could just be a warm water tank.
Not yet soletis.
Yeah, less than Yad Soletis. Okay,
That would be a,
yeah, it's an option.
I don't think you can turn the temperature on and down.
It's not easily adjustable. I mean, the water tanks that we have in our homes are not made for that type of utility to adjust the
Made to go to
temperature.
120 degrees to kill bacteria.
Yeah,
Legion.
That's what the.
we'll hold it here.
oh yeah.
Go ahead.